just to keep this brief, today we learned quite a lot about MATLAB. You can we learned about loading and running it on different systems. In general, you load MATLAB with module load MATLAB and preferably a version number. If you don't include a version number, it usually loads the latest version. Then you can start the MATLAB GUI with the command MATLAB ampersand, except on facilities with, you can do this on LUNARC and Kebnekaise as well, but on those systems, it's preferable to use on demand. You can also run MATLAB in the terminal with MATLAB -no display. And typically you also need to include single comp thread to avoid eating all the, in case you end up on a login node. And sometimes you also need this no splash and no desktop. And there are a couple of, you might need this open SS or open SSGL or something on NSC, and specifically. You can check the documentation for specific flags that might be required for specific facilities. We learned about the Slurm job scheduler and how to use that with MATLAB. So you start by configuring the cluster, either before starting MATLAB by using config cluster.sh, and typically you have to include a project ID as well. That may or may not be true depending on the cluster. In some facilities, you can also go into the MATLAB command line and run config cluster without .sh, and that will also do the cluster configuration. Then you can add job settings that are needed to run jobs from MATLAB by either typing them in at the MATLAB command line, by getting a or by setting them in a GUI. In the MATLAB command line, what you do is you get a handle for the cluster by setting something like C or cluster equals par cluster, and then the name of the cluster profile. And then you call off of the that cluster handle, you call additional properties, and then you type like C.additional properties dot, and then the name of the property, like account name or wall time. Set all those settings, and then do C.save profile, and that will save the cluster profile or the Slurm parameters for any batch jobs that you submit that way. You can also do this from the cluster profile manager, which is in the MATLAB GUI. And then you can submit jobs from inside the MATLAB terminal interface by doing like job equals batch and then my script. You can write a separate Slurm script that uses MATLAB on the inside, in which case you would set some the standard sbatch parameters, and then load the MATLAB module and its version, and then run MATLAB -no JVM -no display -r, and then the name of the program with arguments in the parentheses. And then you would run that script by saying sbatch and then the name of the script with the .sh. Those little backticks should not be there. You can also use GPUs with MATLAB by calling like GPUs per node equals 1. You can also submit jobs from inside the MATLAB GUI using the following syntax, where again you assign the cluster handle, same as you did to set the additional properties, and then you set job or J equals to like C.batch, and then the name of the function, the number of output arguments, not the names of them, but the number of them. And then you give a list of the input arguments, pool in quotes, and then the number of workers. Alternatively, you can call batch and pass the cluster handle as the first argument, and everything else is the same. You can call j.wait to block the use of the GUI before the results are returned, in case you don't want to do something that would interrupt it. And then once the job is actually done, you can call off the job handle, you can call fetch outputs, and then that prints out the results. Make sure that you are aware that batch also accepts script names in place of function names, but these have to be given in single quotes with no at and no extension. And you can also work with Matlab in parallel, either interactively or in the GUI, or either interactively or in your batch commands. The three main arguments, or the three main functions that do parallelization are par4 for simple for loops with independent iterations, SPMD, which stands for single process multiple data, which allows worker-to-worker communication and some collaboration. And then there's par-f-eval, which does tasks that may depend on other tasks or need to run in the background, but don't necessarily require worker-to-worker communication. You can also check that you're in an interactive session. And after running interactive on, if you're on UPPMAX, or if you run the interactive command on UPPMAX, or if you run interactive on LUNARC as a last resort, you'll see that the Linux prompt shows another hostname. We skipped the add-ons, but you can view add-ons and toolboxes in the GUI. There is a separate GUI for viewing the toolbox. There's a toolbox manager that you can look through, and you can install add-ons in the add-ons Explorer. And the installation folder will by default be in Matlab search path, and so it should be accessible from anywhere you are in the file tree. Then finally, there was I believe we skipped both of these sections. We definitely didn't do a Matlab and Jupyter because that's currently not functioning. Mm. But if you attended the UPPMAX simultaneous session, you learned about interactive usage on UPPMAX.
No, that doesn't work for Pelle. So and Bianca. So
okay, so then
we skip that totally from.
Okay, so there was a session on interactive use for clusters on, or for clusters at UPPMAX, NSC, and Dardel. But if you were on LUNARC or if you were at LUNARC or HPC2N, there was also an on-demand session for exploring interactive use with the on-demand applications. So we learned a lot today. So now what we would like you to do is